Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a crime thriller from Germany, German language English subs, released in the year 2005, directed by Christian Albert, and this film is called Antibodies. So Antibodies is about a sadistic child serial killer who has been finally caught in spectacular fashion. Now he resides in a prison cell where he's going to spend the rest of his life. So a detective in charge of an unsolved murder case of a young girl in the remote countryside is interviewing this serial killer because he believes he knows something about it, but the more he interviews the serial killer, the more the serial killer is getting inside his head. And the tagline to this film, "Evil is a virus," is definitely apparent in this case because this detective is starting to develop very aggressive personality traits that were completely foreign to him. So not only does he have to try and solve the case, but he also has to try and save his soul before it's too late. So whether or not he can is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Antibodies. I was actually quite excited to see this movie. Not a lot of people talk about it on YouTube, but it has made quite a buzz in the festival circuits, especially in Europe, as a very dark and disturbing thriller that has a lot of comparisons with Silence of the Lambs. So I knew that coming in, which is one of the incentives why I wanted to watch it. You know, I love Silence of the Lambs, but I was hoping that this movie was going to take inspiration from Silence of the Lambs instead of plagiarising as Silence of the Lambs. So there is a big difference between taking inspiration and actually making your own film, but taking cues from those classics that made them so good, or there is a shot-for-shot sort of copy which doesn't take any skill. And so that is definitely a hesitation coming into a movie when you have that comparisons to such classics, but I was hoping that Christian Albert would actually make a movie of his own from the inspiration of, you know, Silence of the Lambs. And after finally watching Antibodies, I will say that thankfully that movie does take a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of similarities, but the movie does definitely stand on its own 2 feet. And so that was a relief. I thought as though this could have gone down that path that has been done before, that's very successful. Copying a very successful formula is a very easy thing to do. But Christian Albert, he makes a really dark and disturbing experience. This is an experience that is incredibly psychological, which is definitely the case in Silence of the Lambs, and that's the biggest comparison. It's a very dark psychological experience. But this movie, the killer, although he's very similar to Hannibal Lecter, he was actually quite different at the same time, and so that's something that I really liked. I really like the fact that it really pushes the boundaries as far as decency is concerned. If you are a sensitive viewer, then this movie is definitely not for you. It's definitely in the more extreme category because of what this killer actually does to these children, and it's all implied. It's never shown in a graphic detail, which it doesn't really need to. You know, sometimes it's even more scary to imply something than to actually see it. And this movie uses implication in a way that really shapes that imagination, that monster inside your head. And so the tagline of "Evil is a virus" is definitely the case in this film. This detective is starting to change from the person that he was. And I really like that. You know, good people can be corrupted by evil. And when they're corrupted by evil, this is where the psychological battleground really takes place. And that's something I really enjoyed. Just going from good to bad, I thought, all right, well, it's something that anyone can fall victim to. If you've got a very manipulative person, then this is definitely what can happen. You can shape vulnerability, and that when that vulnerability turns into something completely different, I thought this is what really maintained my interest from start to finish. The sustainability as far as interest is concerned, I thought was really well done, and that is down to the back and forth between the detective and the serial killer. I thought the serial killer was very dark and disturbed, and that's something that I really like. Not quite as good as Hannibal Lecter, but it still does a very good job at actually really creeping under your skin, and just the stories that he tells I just thought were just absolutely horrific. And so again, be very careful going into that. There is a little bit of on-screen violence, but it doesn't rely on that, and that's why I felt as though it was disturbing as it was. If I have issues with this movie, I thought as though the ending was very weak. I thought it could have gone down a path that would have been absolutely fantastic. It would have reminded me of David Fincher's Seven, where David Fincher was not afraid to really push that boundary and really just completely hit you in the stomach with a sledgehammer at the end and make no apologies for it. But I thought this movie was going down that path, but then it chickened out to some degree, and I thought, all right, well, that was a really generic sort of silly ending, and I thought as though the movie deserved a better finish. And there were moments that I thought were very hard to understand, in that they're very stupid, very random acts that I thought really didn't connect very well in the experience. I just thought as though they were very much out of place. And so there is a little bit of silliness to this movie, but pushing that aside, if you like Silence of the Lambs, this is a film that will definitely gravitate to you. You will appreciate the fact that it's not a carbon copy. It does take inspiration, but it's a very, very dark psychological experience that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of. And so if you're one of those people who haven't heard of it, definitely give this movie a try. I think it will surprise a lot of people. So overall, for Antibodies, it's not a classic, but it's certainly a very, very interesting ride. I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later.